America owes $40 trillion in debt and nobody is ever paying that back. What are they going to do instead? They're going to make it disappear with inflation, which is bad for you and bad for your portfolio. Because while the government can make its own debt disappear with inflation, you won't be able to make yours disappear. How do I know this? Because this has already happened to a real country. First, they wiped out every debt. So mortgages, business loans, all gone. I know that sounds too good to be true, and it's because it was too good to be true, because the next step, they handed them straight back to people while bailing out the banks and themselves. Don't you love the government? So it's us against the banks and the government on this one, and it's a fight that we've lost before. But that's a good thing, because we know what losing looks like, and now we can protect ourselves against it. So if you've got a mortgage, a credit card, a car on finance, and are hoping for a US dollar collapse to wipe the slate clean, this one's for you. Today we'll discuss 3 things. Why the government's debt disappears and yours doesn't, which one of your debts gets wiped out with it, and which one could get a lot worse, and the debt you're probably overpaying right now that you should probably leave completely alone, to be honest. Let's figure this out together. So let's start with the country that did this before, Germany. So in 1923, Germany had an inflation problem. Prices were doubling every few days. It was absolutely crazy. So picture a bloke who borrowed 100,000 marks. Marks was their currency. He didn't borrow 100,000. People called him, what am I on about? Marks was their currency. So a guy borrowed 100,000 marks back in 1920 to buy a farm. Big loan, life-changing money at the time. By late 1923, 3 years later, he clears out the entire thing with a banknote that he just finds in his pocket. That's how bad inflation got. In 1920, 100,000 marks could buy you a farm. 3 years later, it was literally pocket change. And that's not one lucky farmer, by the way. That's the whole country. Every mortgage, every business loan, every private debt in Germany was just gone. Boom. So to put that into perspective, let's say that you have a $300,000 mortgage right now. Then the US dollar inflates so much that they start printing $100,000 bills. It costs $10,000 to buy some milk. It costs $100,000 to fill up your car. Obviously, you're going to take 3 of those $100,000 bills to pay off your mortgage, right? Well, that was Germany back in 1923. And it was awesome while it was happening. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't really awesome. There were a lot of problems. But the part where you got to pay off your entire mortgage for pocket change was pretty awesome. But it didn't last because the currency quickly got replaced. Out with the mark, in with the Reichsmark. So if there are any Germans, by the way, here, I'm sorry for how I'm butchering your language. I hope I'm saying it kind of right. Anyway, the Reichsmark was the new currency, and the German government has got a decision to make about all the loans that just evaporated, right? Because somebody's lost that money. For every farmer who cleared his loan with pocket change, there's a lender who's holding nothing anymore. And it wasn't just banks, it was also pension funds, insurance companies, people who had lent their money to the government and bought bonds, basically ordinary people that had lent their life savings out, and inflation had turned it into absolutely nothing. So there's enormous pressure on the government at the time to put this right, which sounds fair enough really, until you see who ends up paying for it. On the 16th of July 1925, they passed a law called the Revaluation Act, which means the mortgages came back at 25% of their original worth. So our farmer, the one who paid off his farm with a single banknote in 1923, owed a quarter of it again by 1925. Now there's the other half of it that happened on the very same day. They passed a second law about the money the government itself had borrowed. All those war bonds that ordinary Germans had bought to fund the war. If you don't know what a war bond is, by the way, it's pretty simple. The government needs money to fight, so ordinary people lend them the money. You handed over your savings, they promised to pay you back with interest. Very patriotic. But in the end, not only did they not give you your interest, they paid the bonds back at only 2.5% of their value. So if you lent them 100 marks, they gave you 2.5 marks back, which is absolutely crazy. So what you owed the bank had to be repaid at 25% of its value. What the government owed you, they repaid you at 2.5%, 10 times worse. Don't you bloody love governments? So there wasn't even a vote on this, by the way. They just kind of said, screw you, you're doing this. And if you didn't, you go to jail. And somebody decided to take them to court. He sued the government. Obviously, why wouldn't you? In November of 1925, the German Supreme Court had a look at it and ruled that the law was perfectly constitutional. Tough luck, farmers. And this, of course, led to a wave of bankruptcies across German businesses. I mean, the economy was not in a good place at this point. These people thought they had paid off their debt, and all of a sudden, it reappears at 25% of its value. And if their savings were sat in government bonds, they only got 2.5% of those back, so they couldn't even use their own money to cover it. That one act finished off so many businesses in Germany. So the obvious question is why? I mean, why would a government do that to its own people? 2 years after they've already been through hell, by the way. And the answer to that is the reason that your debt and their debt operates under completely different rules. See, when the bank gives you a $300,000 mortgage, it acquires an asset. It's a claim on your future repayments secured against your house. So your mortgage is money you owe, but to the bank, it's money that they own. And most of what the bank is worth is the millions of mortgages it's handed out to people. So if those mortgages get wiped away all of a sudden, so does the bank. And that is how hyperinflation can wipe out the entire banking system. It destroys the value of the debts that people owe to the banks. So now, pretend to be evil for a second and look at it from the government's perspective. I don't know why I said that. So just pretend to be the government for a second. A country can survive its people going broke. That happens all the time. Every recession, millions of people go under, and the country just, carries on because screw the people. But it can't survive its banks, or more broadly, its lenders going broke. That absolutely kills it. Because the moment lending stops, money stops being created. No new mortgages, no business loans, no credit lines, nothing. And then you don't have an economy anymore. And that is why the bondholders got almost nothing back. They lent money too, they just weren't a bank, so who cares about them? If the banks go down, the whole system goes down with them. If a few 100,000 savers go down, nothing breaks, not for the government anyway. So the government saved the machine that makes the money and let the savers just burn. So when it's a choice between you and the bank wins. That's what happened in 1920s Germany, and it's what happened in the US in 2008. 2008 was obviously not a reset, but the banks were in trouble and we had to bail them out, which is a beautiful system for banks, by the way. They run up their scams, they pump up the markets, they leave you holding the bag, and on top of that, you still have to bloody bail them out. Now, you might be tempted to blame the banks because it's not like the government is going to rewrite your mortgage, but really it is the government that's at fault here. I mean, the banks aren't innocent anyway, but it's the government that's at fault because they don't have to touch your contract at all. They just rewrite the money that the contract was written in, and your contract comes along for the ride. That's precisely what Germany did. So nobody knocked on a farmer's door in 1925 and renegotiated a mortgage contract with them. The government just reset the money. See, every rule about debt in a crisis gets written by people protecting the banks. Now, that's how you get screwed and the banks get saved. But there's another layer to this. And yeah, it does involve you getting screwed a little bit more, but don't worry. I'm going to talk about how to protect yourself later. Now, the next layer is the government's debt. Right now, the US has $40 trillion of debt, an obscene amount of money. And they pay interest on that debt to the tune of about 1.25 trillion per year, which as a side note is more than they spend on their military, which is, again, obscene. So there are really only three ways out of debt. Option one is you grow your way out of it. But you can't grow your way out of debt this big, not unless you raise taxes and cut spending, which is just not going to happen because any president who does that is going to lose the election. Option two is you default. But US government debt is the foundation of the entire global financial system. If America defaults, it takes the whole world down with it. So that's not happening either. Option three is you print so much money that the debt becomes meaningless. See, if you control the printers and you have $40 trillion worth of debt and you just print $40 trillion, technically you pay off your debt. Bit of a problem though, the hyperinflation we've been talking about. But really, that's the only option they have. Now, look, they're not going to literally print $40 trillion. They don't need to wipe all of the debt off in one go. They just need to print enough money that the debt becomes smaller compared to how much money they have now. And we all know that they're going to pick this route because every government in history that has gotten itself into this position has landed on the same answer. You don't announce it, you just keep inflation running hot and keep telling everyone that it's temporary, which is ongoing, by the way. It's happening right now. So if you save $10,000 in the year 1999, it'd be worth about $5,000 now in terms of what you can buy. I'll give you a better example, a more recent one. If you saved $10,000 3 years ago, it'd be worth around about $9,200 in terms of what you could buy with it. That's because they keep printing money to devalue their debt, but it also ends up devaluing your money, obviously. And how do they do that? They borrow off of you and off of foreign countries and off of anyone who's going to lend them money. They promise to pay you 4% a year for 30 years. They then print enough money that inflation runs at 5%. So you get your 4%, but everything you buy goes up by 5%. So you're going backwards by 1% a year, and they're going forwards by 1% a year, every single year for 30 years, and you're just going along with it because you agreed to it in writing. Oh, and there's actually a fourth way that I completely forgot about to devalue your debt. It's called How to Retire by 2036. It's a free guide written by me, and it's linked to below. Go and grab it, it costs you nothing. It also signs you up to my free weekly newsletter, which I'm sure you'll love. Okay, let's get back to what we're talking to. I'm sorry for that cheesy plug. Right, so we talked about their debt, now let's talk about your debt. And it all comes down to one word that nobody ever bothers to explain: repricing. So let me explain repricing properly from zero. This is important because it tells you which of your debts they can use against you. So every debt you've got has a rate on it, and every rate is one of two things. It's either locked or it isn't locked. And most people have no idea which one they've got. Say you've got a $300,000 mortgage at 3% per year over 30 years. Your repayment is about $1,265 per month. Now let's add inflation at 10% per year for 5 years. That's not a crazy number, by the way. We did 9% in 2022. So after 5 years of that, everything costs about 60% more. Your $4 coffee is now $6.45. Your weekly shop, your petrol, all of it costs more. But your mortgage payment is still $1,265 because it's locked, it's at a fixed rate. In real money, in what it actually costs you to live, the payment is now worth about $785 per month for the same house. Now, you didn't do anything clever here. You didn't refinance, you didn't renegotiate, you didn't even ring them. The bank just ate 38% of what you owed them and they had to sit there and take it. That's a dream, right? That's what people mean when they say a collapse wipes out your debt. And for that mortgage, it's kind of true. It works. It's a fixed rate. So it does kind of wipe out your debt to an extent. But try to do the exact same thing with a credit card and it's not going to work out too well for you. The average American credit card rate right now is 21%. And that rate is not locked. It just floats. So inflation goes to 10%. The Fed, which is America's central bank, the people who set interest rates, starts hiking interest rates to fight it. That is literally their job, by the way. And then your card goes to 30%, maybe 35%. They don't need to ask your permission to do this. It just goes up because the contract you signed years ago allows them to do that. So the same inflation that just wiped out 38% of your mortgage has made the credit card in your pocket way more expensive to carry. And this wouldn't really matter that much if your wages went up to compensate, but of course your wages never really go up. Prices of groceries reprice daily. Somebody in a shop just changes a label. Interest rates reprice monthly, sometimes faster than that. Your pay rise happens on the 5th Sunday of every February. So there is one, that is such a bad joke, I'm very sorry. But there's one debt in your life that all of this makes completely safe, to an extent anyway. I'll tell you which one and why you want to stop overpaying it, but we're going to go through each of them one by one. So let's go through your debts one by one, work out which is which. It's actually really simple. There's one question that decides it, and you can answer it tonight with your own paperwork. Can this debt be repriced against me? That's the question. A 30-year fixed mortgage? No, it's locked for 30 years and there is nothing the bank can do about that. That is a really strong position to be in. And yes, I know they did something about it in Germany, but that's because the currency died in about 18 months. When it goes that fast, every debt in the country vanishes at once and the banks are finished, so they have to legislate it back. A slow debasement, like what's happening in the US right now, never triggers that. The banks stay standing the whole way, so nobody ever needs to pass that law. So a mortgage that cannot be repriced is one of the safer debts that you might have, but a credit card that can be repriced instantly and without you asking. A home equity line of credit, a personal line of credit, anything with the word variable in it anywhere in the paperwork, yeah, that can be repriced. A car loan is usually fixed, which is fine, but it's short. It's gone in 5 years, and 5 years isn't long enough for inflation to do anything really that much to you. For student loans, go and take a look. In America, the federal ones are fixed. Private ones very often are not, and people assume that they're the same thing. So go check that one out. So that is the question. Can it be repriced against me? If the answer is yes, you aren't in a great position. And sadly, for most of the world, even your mortgage can be repriced against you. In Britain, you fix your mortgage for 2 years, maybe 5 years, and then you reset at whatever the rate happens to be at the time. Same in Canada, same in Australia mostly. America is the odd one out. The 30-year mortgage barely exists anywhere else on earth, lucky bastards. And right now, roughly 69% of American mortgages are sitting at 5% or lower. So most of you are sat on about the best mortgage on earth. Good job, I guess. But hold that thought, because there's something that undoes all of this, and it's got nothing to do with your debt at all. And that something is your job. Now, there's a guy in the comments called All In Chad who's been waiting for this bit. He's the guy who watches half the video and makes up the rest. And Chad's got a plan. Chad is going to max out every credit card he owns, buy something stupid, and let inflation clear out the balance. A free Lamborghini. Here's what Chad is missing though. Everybody stares at government debt, that big scary $40 trillion number. Almost nobody watches private debt. Your debt, my debt, company debt, and private debt is the thing that actually causes a financial crisis. Two American economists, Atif Mian and Amir Sufi, went and measured this properly after 2008, and they wrote a book about it called House of Debt. It's a great book, go check it out. American household debt doubled between 2000 and 2007, up to about 14 trillion. Then 8 million jobs were lost between 2007 and 2009, and they could map this out county by county in the US. The places where households had borrowed most are the places places that jobs disappear the fastest. But how on earth does household debt lead to job losses? Well, when enough households are stretched thin, they stop spending money. Then businesses lose customers, so they cut staff. And the bloke who gets laid off might not even owe a penny of debt to anyone. You might be debt-free, you might have a great job, and you just lose it because someone else can't control their spending. To be fair though, these days it's not even about controlling your spending. A lot of people just need debt to live, which is quite sad. Anyway, back to you losing your job because of someone else's debt. What makes that dangerous is that it happens all at once. Interest rates go up to fight inflation, but that's what makes your credit card and your variable mortgage more expensive. And it's the same rate rise that stretched those households in the first place. They stop spending, businesses can't borrow either, and the layoffs start. So the thing that makes your debt more expensive, interest rates, is the same thing that takes your income away. They arrive together. So all that mortgage mathematics we did, if it's fixed, it doesn't really matter because it only works if you're still employed. If you're not, your mortgage could be cut in half and you still couldn't afford it. So what do you do with all this? Well, there's three things. The first is try not to take on debt. Now, I know this is almost impossible for everyone. You need at least a mortgage, but beyond that, just try not to take on debt if you really don't have to. Debt is a trap. Even forgetting about all of this, it's just a massive financial trap. Credit cards are the worst offender, by the way. If you have a credit card and you use it a lot, before you use it, just stop and think, do I really need to purchase this thing I'm buying with my credit card? Life gets so much easier when you don't take on unnecessary debt. Second is to understand how interest works. And it is really a simple formula in the end. There's the interest you earn and the interest you pay. If you're paying 10% on a car loan while your savings earn you 5%, you're losing money. A simple way to do this is to list all your savings, where they're located, and the average interest you earn per year. So this might be money that you have in a high interest savings account in your bank, money you have in investments. So in one column, all the money that you've got and the interest it's earning. The other column has all the debts you have and the interest that you're paying. Everywhere where you're paying more interest than you're earning, which is going to be a lot of them to be fair, but yeah, everywhere where you're paying more interest than you're earning, you generally want to focus on paying those off first. But there's another layer to add, and we've already talked about this a bit, but we need to talk about it in more detail. This is the third and most important one. Look at all your debts and sort them by one thing, whether it can be repriced against you. Then go after the repriceable stuff first. Credit cards, lines of credit, anything with variable in the paperwork, anything that the bank can call in. So basically anything that is high interest rate and repriceable is super bad. Get rid of it as fast as you can. And if you don't know which of yours are which, don't worry, that's not you being thick. It's deliberately hard to see. I mean, they do this shit on purpose. So go and find the actual paperwork, not the app, the agreement. You're looking for two words, fixed or variable, and make a plan to get rid of the repriceable high interest stuff first. That is the opposite to what most people do. Most people attack the biggest number first, and the biggest number is generally their mortgage because it's the one that frightens them. 6 figures, 30 years to run, and the mortgage is the bit that you generally want to leave alone. If you've got a 3% fixed mortgage and a 21% credit card and you're throwing your spare money at the mortgage, you're overpaying the cheap one while the credit card eats you alive. For what it's worth, I've got a mortgage and mine's variable because I'm not in America and a 30-year fix isn't really a thing over here. But mine is locked for 5 years, so that gives me a massive amount of heads up, which is another layer of what to look at. Some stuff is variable but fixed for a certain period, which gives you a bit more leeway, so consider that too. And now there's something else that we need to talk about. I want to ask you a question that almost nobody has the answer to. Whenever I ask this to people, they don't have an answer for me. If all your income stopped tomorrow, how long could you live? Basically, you have zero income coming in. How long could you live? Because worst case scenario, your income disappears at the same moment that your debt gets expensive. So the real question isn't only what you owe, it's how long you last if money stopped arriving, which is why you need at least 3 to 6 months of cash set aside. Now, I know this is counterintuitive because cash is such a bad investment, but it's also liquid and you can't pay your bills with stocks or gold. And the big problem is in a crisis, your stocks and maybe even your gold are going to crash. So if you have 10K set aside to cover your expenses and that 10K rapidly becomes 5K because it's in stocks or gold, you no longer have 10K set aside. So the name of the game is sorting your debts and also focusing on having some emergency cash. And a lot of people are going to say, why would I have cash if they're going to reset the currency? Well, the thing is, a currency reset doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds over time. But you have to buy food every day. You have to pay your bills every day. So that cash is not there for any reason other than you need it to survive. In every crisis I've watched in my 25 years in investing, the people who owed money are the ones who got destroyed first. And the people who didn't have cash set aside were the ones who had to dump their entire portfolio just to make ends meet. If you don't know anyone anything and you have emergency cash set aside, nobody can make you sell the bottom. That is a big part of surviving whatever they throw at you, because remember, your debt is a bank's asset and governments protect protect the banks. Germany proved this in the 1920s. The US proved it again in 2008, and nothing's changed. If you enjoyed this video, watch my video on the signs that come before a currency reset. And if you want a longer version of how I'm putting all of this together, there's my free guide on retiring by 2036. It's linked to below, along with the newsletter. I'll see you in the next one.